Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3. Considering the high praise and sales garnered by the first two games, Activision would have to be insane not to make a Pro Skater 3, especially now that the Xbox and GameCube were on their way out to the market the year it would come out. The more powerful hardware of the PS2, Xbox, and GameCube would allow for a more expansive and technically impressive game, something which was never fully realized when the first two games came to the Dreamcast, the oft-forgotten other 6th generation console. Pro Skater 3 was released on October 28, 2001 for the PS1, PS2, Game Boy Color, GBA, and N64, with versions for the Xbox and GameCube coming out after they launched a few weeks later in November. Pro Skater 3 was not only a financial success, selling 2.4 million copies worldwide, but it was also a critical darling upon its release. In fact, it tied with Grand Theft Auto 3 for the best PS2 game of all time on MetaCritic with a rating of 97 out of 100. Before getting into Pro Skater 3 though, I want to take a quick look at what can be considered to be the definitive editions of the first two Pro Skaters: Tony Hawk's Pro Skater for the Dreamcast, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2X for the Xbox. The Dreamcast port of the first Pro Skater only really differs from the first in the graphical department. The draw distance has been greatly extended and everything looks smoother thanks to some anti-aliasing. However, it still has the somewhat stiff controls of the PlayStation version, and the colors range from deep to too damn dark. Pro Skater 1 had a pretty drab color palette to begin with, and playing it through VGA on the Dreamcast makes some areas so dark that it's almost impossible to see. Stick with the PlayStation version on this one. Pro Skater 2X, however, is definitely an upgrade from the original version. It was a launch title for the Xbox and contains all the levels from the first two Pro Skaters, including 5 levels exclusive to this version of the game. It runs smoothly, it looks nice, and is most certainly the definitive way to play Pro Skater 2 if you live in North America. It was never released anywhere else in the world, and since Activision recently lost the Tony Hawk license, it likely never will be. So modded consoles and imports are the way to go here. I still recommend picking up the original version of Pro Skater 2 though, so you have a frame of reference. Alright, now that I've got the gameplay of the first two games fresh in my head, let's take a look at Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 for the PlayStation 2. Just like the first two games, Pro Skater 3 has the arcade structure of plopping you into a level with 2 minutes to complete a set number of goals, in this case 9. Complete a certain number of goals and you can move on to the next level. Every few levels is a competition level where you do your best to score as many points as possible in 3 rounds that last a minute each. While the structure hasn't changed, the presentation certainly has been upped. Pretty much every level has at least one goal that involves destruction or mischief that triggers a sort of mini cutscene involving NPCs in the level, such as knocking the foreman into a vat of water on Foundry or helping this creepy dude get into this haunted house in suburbia. The gameplay's also been tweaked a bit from Pro Skater 2, and honestly, it feels just about perfect now. The controls have been getting more fluid and responsive since the first game, and this is easily the best that these games have felt so far. I don't feel like moving a truck while turning, and movement in general just feels smoother and quicker than before. The most important addition to the gameplay this time around is the revert, which allows you to keep your combo going after landing in a half pipe or quarter pipe, allowing you to go into a manual and string together monstrously huge combos if you know what you're doing. And the more intricate, more expansive level design certainly helps with that. Foundry already gets bonus points for not being another version of Warehouse from Pro Skater 1. It's big and open, but not overwhelmingly so. Pretty heavy on rails to grind too. Canada shows that Pro Skater 3 isn't messing around with the size of its levels. It isn't monstrously big, but it's certainly segmented in a way that the landmarks and points of interest are identified not just by their own characteristics, but also by their surroundings. It strikes a decent balance between travel routes, ramps, rails, and pipes. Rio, being the first competition level, isn't that big and isn't very interesting, but it has the essentials for a decent skate park and does what it's meant to do. Suburbia is certainly where the game starts getting more difficult, as you have to very carefully maneuver yourself in certain ways to be able to complete a good chunk of the goals, particularly collecting the skate letters, smashing these non-musical pumpkins, and returning power to the satellite dish. The airport feels like a holdover from the first Pro Skater in the sense that it's a linear, race-to-the-finish sort of level. What it sorely lacks in ramps, it graciously compensates for with an overabundance of things you can grind on. Unfortunately, once you reach the end of the level, there's not much to hold your attention and relatively little to do. Skater Island, the second competition level, is your typical indoor skate park and, like Rio, serves its purpose. Los Angeles may not be as big as Canada, but it's certainly got more going for it. One of the goals is to cause an earthquake by grinding 4 particular rails, and doing so actually changes the level a fair bit, and is required to do in order to complete another goal, stopping a police chase. I actually spent the most time here completing the 6th score goal, which is 400,000 points. You need to go all over the place to hit this goal, and it took me nearly an hour to do it. Tokyo is the last competition level, and while it's pretty cool to look at, it's not incredibly fun to play. You're mainly going to be grinding here, and you're going to be going along the same lines, but if you screw up once, well, you're kind of fucked. Finally, we have the cruise ship, which acts as a sort of bonus level celebrating you clearing career mode. It's big, it's pretty, and it throws 9 more goals at you. If you complete all goals and earn gold medals on all 3 competitions, you unlock a new secret character or cheat depending on how many characters you cleared the game with. Since I only did it once, I got... So I see now that it has come to this. The fact that Activision was able to get Darth Maul put into the game when LucasArts was still around and a successful developer and publisher is actually pretty cool, except for the fact that this game came out closer to Attack of the Clones than Phantom Menace, but it's cool that he's here nonetheless. Pro Skater 3's graphics hold up pretty well over 15 years later, with the exception of face textures. There's certainly more color here than in Pro Skater 1, but it's not overbearingly saturated like in Pro Skater 2. The soundtrack is also further proof that Neversoft knows what they're doing when licensing music, with artists like Del the Funky Homo Sapien, CKY, Motorhead, rest in peace, Lemmy, and Red Hot Chili Peppers being represented. Now, while I agree with the critics that Pro Skater 3 is an absolutely fantastic game, it honestly feels like more of the same. Not enough has really changed between this and the previous game to really warrant a full-priced sequel. You know that if this were released today, this would be a DLC or expansion and not a full-price $60 game, but considering that it's Activision, you know that this would be a full-price $60 game. It's just sort of in their nature. Considering that it typically goes for only a few bucks though, I would still recommend Pro Skater 3 to those of you who have played the first 2, as well as to those of you who've never played any game in the Tony Hawk series before. It's a solid starting point for newcomers, and the tweaks it makes to the gameplay in addition to the fantastic level design makes it a worthy sequel at a discounted price. Let me be perfectly clear. Pro Skater 3 is a great game. I really like it. The level design is one of the best parts about it. But there's not enough here to warrant a full sequel, and honestly, I'm glad that you can only find it for about $5. So, honestly, it's worth $5, even if you already have Pro Skaters 1 and 2, because really the changes here probably would be worth around $10 or $15, but the fact that it's $5, pretty good. But anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and happy gaming.